If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. That refrain from our psalm today, I think, is something that we need to continue to go back to in our relationship with God. Because many times in life, God tells us exactly what we need, but our hearts are hardened due to sin. Our hearts are hardened because we don't want what the Lord wants. In fact, that's part of the struggle in today's gospel. When the apostles go to Jesus and say to him, increase our faith, he's like, whoa, hold your horses. You aren't ready for that yet. In fact, if you had just the faith of a mustard seed, which we hear in another parable, but if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you could tell this mulberry plant, be moved in the sea and it be uprooted and go. And yet, you don't even have that much faith yet. You aren't where you need to be. Be where you are, not look at the destination. Many times as Catholics, as Christians, we are so focused on the destination that we don't realize that the journey of faith is where the Lord meets us. He meets us not where we want to be, but where we are. And that is how we're called to be disciples of Christ. He meets us in our brokenness. He meets us in our wounds. He meets us in our imperfections. He meets us in our successes as well. But many times, those first three are the things that we tend to focus on. How I'm not good enough. How life isn't what I want it to be. How things just aren't functioning in the world how I want them to go. Lord, why have you cursed me? As we heard in Habakkuk in our first reading. And yet the Lord reminds us, as he reminded the prophet, this too shall pass. You may have a time in your life, and it may seem like it's an eternal time of life where things aren't going how you want them to go, and yet the Lord has never abandoned you. This last week, the priests of the Archdiocese were on retreat in Wichita, and Bishop Andrew Cousins from Minnesota came and gave us our conferences this week, and he focused on, in our first conference on Monday evening, the understanding that not only are we called to have the Lord abide in us, but that as sons and daughters of God, we are called to abide in the Lord. You may say, okay, what does that mean, Father? I said, well, first and foremost, that means we have to clean out space in our lives, space in our hearts for the Lord to exist. We talk about this a lot, that's why we talk a lot about the sacrament of reconciliation, because if we are going back to the well of sin, it's difficult for us to go to the font of God's mercy. It's difficult for us to allow the gift of faith to truly bear fruit in our hearts and in our lives because we aren't going to that fount. Instead, many times we're saying, well, God hasn't blessed me how I want him to bless me, so I can't do what it is I want to do. Well, sometimes that's true. Sometimes the Lord purposely doesn't bless you how you want to be blessed. I wanted to be 6'7" and be able to dunk a basketball. I tried once with a trampoline. It did not end well. I wanted that. I thought that that's what I needed to be successful in life. I needed to be tall so that I could be seen as an equal. And the Lord said, you'll be tall enough. I am the tallest in my family. I look all over their heads, and yet I didn't get what I wanted. But I got what the Lord needed me to have. Good things come in small packages, right? And then I got fat. So it's like, okay, Lord, come on, man. And that one's my fault, 100%. And yet, how many times do we go to the Lord and complain and whine and gripe and moan because things aren't as easy as we want them to be? But remember, the Lord never promised us it would be easy. He said, if you wish to be my disciple, pick up your cross and follow me. The problem is, not only have we denied Christ many times in our lives, we've denied our crosses just as often in our lives because it's just too hard. I don't have the strength. I don't have the time. I don't have insert other excuse. And yet the Lord wouldn't have put that cross into your path if he wasn't going to give you the means to carry that cross? If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. You know, we struggle sometimes when it comes to the Lord because we live in 21st century America. We live in a world where everything is instant gratification. In fact, many times when people will ask me theological questions at this point, ChatGPT, where's the answer? And then I've got to go back and figure out, okay, is that the actual answer? Because sometimes ChatGPT, Google Answers, isn't right. In fact, I saw on Facebook this afternoon, ChatGPT said Oklahoma beat Kent State 59-10 today. The game kicked off at 3. That answer came at noon. Last time I checked, it can't predict the score of a game. Now, if it ends up being 59-10, that'll be amazing. But many times we put our faith in the wrong institution, don't we? We put our faith in the internet, we put our faith in talking heads, and yet he who we're supposed to put our faith in, we spend a little bit of time with. We make a little bit of time for. We give our extras to. You know, I love going on retreat as a priest. As a seminarian, I hated it. As a seminarian, the idea of sitting in silence was terrifying, and now I kind of look forward to it sometimes. You know, that first day that we had a retreat in seminary in silence, I thought I was going to go insane. We only had 36 to 48 hours this week, and it's like, can we have another couple days, please? Because sometimes just sitting with the Lord in prayer, in peace, and yes, in silence, can we truly hear the mission that he has for us? Now, I don't know everything about the mission that the Lord has given me in life. I don't know about the mission that he's given you in life, except that he's calling us to be loved so that we can love. How do you do that? That's your journey of faith. But I do know that the Lord has given you the tools and the gifts and the skills that you need to accomplish any mission that he has set before you. That should give us hope. That should be enough inspiration that we can fight any fight, and yet we forget that we are in the Jubilee year of hope. And yet we find so much despair in our world. Why is that? It's not because Satan's winning, it's because we stopped fighting the fight, I'd wager to say. Because life is hard. Bills have to be paid. Taxes have to be paid. There are budgets that we have to make. There are concessions that we have to make. And sometimes those concessions are difficult. Sometimes those concessions seem insurmountable. And yet, have you ever had a time in your life, be honest with yourself, be honest with God, have you ever had a time in your life where you have made a concession before the Lord and he has not provided? Anybody? And yet that's the lie that Satan tells us. If I do what God asks me, it'll be just too much. If I give from what the Lord has given me, it'll be just too much. That'll be the straw that breaks the camel's back. That is a lie. If we truly lived our faith, life would begin to make sense. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. In fact, it's going to be harder the more you live your faith. The closer you get to the Lord, the harder Satan has to fight. If your life is easy right now, you're doing it wrong. But Father, ignorance is bliss. No, it's not. Ignorance is ignorance. Ignorance is laziness. As sons and daughters of God, we are called to practice what we preach, and yet we're all hypocrites. Father, how dare you call me a hypocrite? Well, I'm calling myself one as well. Because 9 times out of 10, what comes out of my mouth from this ambo, I'm talking to myself. Not everybody realizes that. I'm preaching to me as much as I'm preaching to you. Because there's some times where I don't do what I need to do as a person, let alone as a priest. Because it's hard to have faith that everything will work out. Because that means we have to let go of control. And as someone with ADHD, it's hard to do that. Because as someone with ADHD, the only way I'm in control is if I'm in chaos. Which makes absolutely no sense, and I get that. That's why sometimes I need to be forced to take a silent retreat. To shut out the voices, to focus on my own relationship with God. As read from St. Paul to Timothy, be not afraid preaching the good news. And yet, many times, we are timid when it comes to our faith. We're afraid that if we talk about God, if we talk about Jesus, if we truly live our faith, that we'll be persecuted. But we forget that line from Matthew 25. If you are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, remember, I was persecuted first. We think that if we follow God's path, everything will be nice and neat. And we forget what his path was. It was a path of sacrifice, a path of love. And yet many times we don't want to sacrifice, which means we really don't want to love. Now I'm talking to kids right now. All of you under the age of 18, listen hard. Your parents sacrifice for you every single day. You are here tonight because they love you, not because they want to force you to be Catholic. That's part of it, to be honest. But you are here tonight because they know that the world is wrong. They're here tonight because they want you to see the Lord who is hope, and they want him to offer you that same hope that sometimes they've given up on in their own lives because life has gotten them down, and yet you are here tonight because they've chosen the better path. They've chosen sacrifice so that you can have food on the table, so you can have clothes on your back, so you can have the nicest, newest, whatever, phone, shoes, hairdos. I don't have to really worry about any of those things because I wear the same shoes for everything. Hairdo, bzz, done. Phone, it's about 5 years old at this point. It's functional, that's all I need. And yet we are taught by the world, if you don't have the newest, fanciest thing, you have no value. Well, I want to tell you something right now. Listen hard. That is a lie from Satan. You don't need the newest. You don't need the shiniest. You need your faith. And that's it. And faith is given to you as a gift by God. So don't be like the apostles, ironically, in today's gospel, asking for an increase in faith. Instead, take the gift of faith the Lord has given to you and put it into practice. As we heard 2 weekends ago in the gospel, if you are faithful in small matters, you'll be faithful in larger matters. If you are unfaithful in small matters, you'll be unfaithful in larger matters. And so take what God has given to you and use it. As I've said sometimes when it comes to like singing in Mass, that is something that we're called to do, to participate. And God gave you a voice, and if the people around you don't like it, give it back to God as loud as you can. Because if he doesn't like it, he'll change it. or he'll make you go mute. I've never heard of anybody going mute for singing too loud in Mass. I'm just going to say that right now. If they did, mea culpa, maxima culpa, my bad. But I don't think that's how the Lord would act. Because he loves you. And he wants you to be the best version of yourself. Which means cutting out the noise and truly living the gospel. Be men and women, sons and daughters of faith. And then whatever obstacle you'll face, you can rely on the Lord and trust in the Lord. That whatever obstacle is there, that too shall pass.